These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
Yes, this is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, and I just refreshed my inbox, Kyle. We have the play-in schedule. That's right. The Wolves, not play-in. Hold on. Sorry. Let me read.
In-season tournament.
The in-season tournament schedule. Yes. Let's go. Let's see here. Minnesota Timberwolves press release. The Wolves today announced the team will play 4 group play games as part of the. So the schedule's coming out today. This is trickling out.
Full NBA schedule will be released, I believe, on Thursday, August 17th.
So this is a little teaser of some of the schedule.
Yep.
It's the in-season tournament schedule. The Wolves will open Group C play with 2 road contests. First by visiting Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs on Friday, November 10th at 7 o'clock Central Time. Mark your calendars. Okay. And then the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday, November 14th at 9 p.m. Wolves' home portion of the Group C play. I love how they're putting like the star player against Domantas Sabonis and the Sacramento Kings on Friday, November 24th. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder on Tuesday, November 28th. And then we'll see if they can get to Vegas, where if they do, you and I will hopefully be waiting with open arms for our Timberwolves and the Vikings against the Raiders that same
I don't know. I'm already thinking of where we're going to have like a live recording at, right? Like what?
Like in the fountain at the Bellagio or just outside the fountain? There's so many different options.
How much do I have to pay to push the button to start the fountain? Like I will put it in the budget. It is, yes. We now know 4. We now know 4 of the 82 games. I will say it is the most perfect August 15th thing to just be like, here's a snippet of your schedule, and then like the entire timeline is just like, here's who the Lakers play in the 4 games. It's like, okay, can we just get the whole schedule out? But it is good. I mean, I was in Vegas for Summer League when they had the drawings of like the pools or like the groups, and the Wolves, I mean, let's just call a spade, have probably one of the easier groups. The Spurs, yes, they have Victor Wembanyama, they're bad. Sacramento is, let's see, maybe they regress. Oklahoma City, I think they got beat by 40 in the playing game.
The Warriors aren't going to give a rip at that point, too. They're going to be figuring out. They're going to play 500 ball until like February, trying to figure out how Chris Paul fits in, right? They're not going to care about the in-season tournament. If
we're all living in a simulation anyway in life, like the Minnesota Timberwolves winning the in-season tournament is the most on-brand thing ever. Like that's what, if that becomes the first banner that they really hang in Target Center or wherever A-Rod builds a new stadium, it would be perfect. So see you November 10th.
Where would you rank the Wolves in terms of teams that will likely desperately try to flex their muscles and win the in-season tournament?
Top
like
5.
The Warriors are on the bottom. The Nuggets are coming off a championship. You know, like they might win it just because they're good. But I think Oklahoma City's in that mix.
Oklahoma City's going to be a tough one too. And I don't love like the prizes for this. Like it would have been cooler if like you got like some sort of draft compensation. Then again, why would the players care about that? But there is a financial incentive here, and I do think maybe younger guys are just going to care about that incentive more. Like what, you know, if you make $500,000 for winning the tournament or $1 million, like does Steph Curry care? No, like those guys are going to be very much like, it's November, dude. We're not worried about basketball. But Minnesota, on the other hand, and this ties into their full schedule and a whole lot of other topics, they need to come out of the gates kind of fast because they stumbled their way into it last year, and they need to show that this experiment is going to work and that they've cleaned some things up. So 4 exciting games. It's cool the way they've at least set it up. I think that it's not my biggest fear when this was announced a couple years ago that like the season would stop or some weird thing, but they're just finding a way to add some value into the regular season. I think that's a plus. So yeah, I'm ready for November. It's going to be a big month.
And these, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe it says this in the press release. I'm just not going to read the whole thing here, but I think they're designating these nights. These are going to be like tournament pool play nights in the NBA,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I mean, they're trying. Yeah. I think these are just going to be like Friday, November 10th will be a play-in night across the league. So once we get into it, it'll add more value, I think, to the fan experience and to, you know, your timelines and how you follow and cover the team. But just, again, I'm just going to say it's August 15th. I probably could care less, but Thursday should be fun because then we get to see the full schedule and kind of know where they're going to be and know when you're coming out to Portland. So we got a chunk of it. We got a little teaser now, and then Thursday is the big one.
Hey, we're going to get into a potential major Karl-Anthony Towns snub here, depending on how much stock you put into it. We're going to get into Kyle rubbing elbows with the rich, the famous, and the New Jerseys, and then we're gonna debut by popular demand the first ever Flagrant Howls Immaculate Grid Challenge. People have been saying, "Hey, we're doing this on the Score North Twin Show every day with the Twins grid or the baseball grid." People want us to do the NBA Immaculate Grid Challenge, so we will do that. I just want to say real quick. So this week, Score North launched about 4 years ago, and this is the first big week-long fundraiser where we're putting all of our podcasts behind the Score North Power of Sports auction benefiting the Courage Kenny Rehabilitation Institute. So at the beginning of the week, we asked our audience across all the Score North podcasts, can you help us raise $10,000 by the end of the week? All of it going to benefit Courage Kenny. And by the way, Courage Kenny, so my uncle 12 years ago spent several months at Courage Kenny. They help children and adults who experience life-altering injuries and disabilities rehab and get back to a place of whatever the new normal can look like. We asked our audience, help us raise $10,000 by the end of the week. We're sitting at $9,500 after the first 24 hours. So
that's cool.
Thank you guys so much. Real quick, because this pertains to this show here in terms of Timberwolves fans. So when you go to scorenorth.com/bid, there's items you can buy straight up. There's buy it nows. The Pearl Jam suite tickets did sell out. There are still Twins executive balcony tickets to hang out with me and Judd while Shohei Ohtani and the Angels are in town. There's items you can bid on, and you can also just straight up donate. But there is an item to bid on right now, 4 lower bowl tickets to a Timberwolves game this year, and a signed Anthony Edwards jersey, plus dinner at Red Rabbit. That's all part of one auction package. So 4 lower bowl tickets to a Wolves game, a signed Anthony Edwards jersey, and dinner at Red Rabbit up for auction right now at scorenorth.com/bid. So, Kyle, if you need to rush over there quick.
I was going to say, how can I go? Can we pause this? How they don't know the game yet, though, right? We don't know that game.
We might have put a date on that game here. Let me just check real quick.
Please do bid on that. And once I say I'm only asking that question because if it's a game I can make it to, I'll fly back for it and meet you for dinner and hang out with you. So we can just talk
Red
Timberwolves.
Rabbit too. So it is. Let's see here. It's a game TBD right now.
Okay.
And we'll work with the Timberwolves to figure out.
We probably don't know the schedule. You know what I mean? Once you know the schedule.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, the schedule's not out till this week.
Look at that. Look at me putting pieces together. So, once that comes out, and again, it's really cool what Score North is doing. I know. I mean, I've been saying this past week too, because everything that's been going down in Maui and Lahaina it's a pretty important spot to me. It's where my wife and I got married. It's always tough to ask people for money. It's a tough time right now. Everything's expensive, but it really does help if you can contribute to these things. And like an organization like that you guys are working with, I've had some connections there. It's just anything helps, really. Anything you can do to help. Obviously, these ways are really creative too. So bid it up, support a really good cause, and Phil and I will meet you for dinner.
Yeah,
we'll be there.
So let's get into the Athletic now for like the 5th straight year or the 4th straight year. They put out their annual NBA Player Tiers project, and the writer is Seth Partnow, and he names the top 125 players in the league and puts them into different tiers. I believe it's 5 different tiers. And he does so each tier, he doesn't necessarily have them ranked, 1, 2, 3, 4, but he's got them in tiers. Yep. So it'll be like tier 4 is, numbers this through this. I'll just cut right to the chase here. Let me find it here. This is tier 4B, and the category is B plus bigs. So these are players ranked between 55 and 66 in no order. He just has them all ranked in this group. And in that group, he has, so these are B plus bigs: Brook Lopez, Miles Turner, Nick Claxton, Jarrett Allen, and Karl-Anthony Towns. What are your thoughts on Karl-Anthony Towns being classified as a B plus big ranked between 55 and 66 among all NBA players?
A theme of this podcast will be that there's just a lot of stuff out there that we're going to talk about that it's built for August. I believe this article at The Athletic, or this project, The Athletic has started to do some pretty interesting content. Let's just say that and move on. I find it funny. I mean, it also backs up the idea that like you can't trade Karl-Anthony Towns. That was my honest biggest takeaway. It's just because there is this national perspective of him just being very low. Like, I think this list sucks. I'll say that, because why is Karl not in the elite shooters category, but Kristaps Porzingis is? It's tough for me to find any shooting statistics.
Where's Porzingis on this list?
He is in the elite shooters with Michael Porter Jr. and Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane is obviously a flamethrower, but
so he's in the next tier, ranked between 40 and 54, basically.
There's also like a high hopes category that has like Evan Mobley, Paolo Banchero, like young stars. And then like Robert Williams III, who is a year younger than Karl and hasn't hit a 3-pointer since he was 14. So the list just doesn't make sense. Like, it just like, I know Karl's value is low. Some of the guys in his grouping are, good players, Miles Turner. It's just, I just come to find myself, Phil, like, okay, there's a lot of words. There's a lot of explanation of how you got to this stuff. But like, if the Wolves offered Karl-Anthony Towns for Robert Williams straight up, the Celtics would do it in a heartbeat. So that kind of just makes this list not like that valuable to me. And then I just was like, if there's one thing you could at least do is like, how is he not in the elite shooters category, but Porzingis is, when there are no stats that show that Porzingis is a better shooter? So I don't know. I just kind of consumed it and then I moved on. But it does show again that, there's more and more people that are connected to teams, used to work for teams, cover the league, that don't really have a high perspective of Karl. And if that's the case, you can't trade him right now. You just got to hope he comes in with a chip on his shoulder, in good shape, and can kind of build up his value for this team or for a future team down the road.
Yeah, I would say a couple things off this list. I agree that there's a lot of fodder in July, August, and early September.
Good word.
And you're looking. You're a content creator for a living, and you're looking to put stuff out. I mean, I would be throwing stones in a glass house if I said, this is clearly filler content. Well, I'm sitting on the finishing touches of my Timberwolves top 100 player list for like next week's episode, right? All right. So I understand a content creator's plight in the dead of the offseason. I don't think he is between 55 and 66. I think it's fair to say Karl-Anthony Towns, even with his flaws and warts, is a top 50 player in the NBA.
Right.
I think he's probably a top 40 player in the NBA. But it's worth a discussion because 2 or 3 years ago, and I remember going on, the Mackey and Judd show, and this is probably toward the end of our 4-hour radio show run when we were opening up the Score North run. I thought he was one of the 10 to 15 best players in the world at one point 4 to 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start to look a little, and I had not done this exercise, looking at like his sort of year by year advanced analytics and just how is he trending after, 8 years in the NBA. Let's just go off some of the advanced analytics here. Let's go off like player efficiency rating, win shares per 48, and let's use like value over replacement player. I'm not saying these are gospel, but let's just use these as measurement, okay? So his highest player efficiency ratings came in 2019 and 20, so 4 and 5 years ago. His highest win shares per 48 came between the ages of 21 and 24, so most recently 4 years ago. And his highest value over replacement player came in his second and third years at the age of 21 and 22. In fact, his win shares per 48, so take like, win share is cumulative if you play more games and you add more value. But if you go win shares per 48 minutes, it takes out like if you missed 50 games because of injury. His win shares per 48 last season was almost half, just a little over half of what it was 5 years ago. So I guess what I find interesting is if you just looked at him last year, and again, he missed 50 games, he was coming back rusty, he's playing a different position, being asked to do different things. It's hard to take just what he was last year and use that in isolation. But I think there's a fair conversation here that for whatever reason, he seems to have either stunted when it comes to growth or has kind of decreased in his value on the court since he became like strictly a 3-point shooter maybe 3 or 4 years ago. There is a conversation about what was he 5 years ago? What is he being asked to do right now? And is he as valuable as he was when I thought he was one of the 15, maybe 20 best players in the world?
Yeah, and I don't think I push back at any of that. I think the counter argument to that counter argument is that he was all NBA 2 seasons ago. And like Porzingis has never been all NBA. Karl's been an all-star 3 times. Porzingis has been 1. Karl's a 40% career 3-point shooter. Porzingis is a 35% 3-point shooter. So again, it's just, we're going to cling to our guys, whether we're like fans of them or not, just the guys we cover. But there is, I mean, a simple basketball reference perusing for Karl just shows like those first 3 years, 82 games, 82 games, 82 games, just kept getting better. And then there was a plateau there for a couple seasons with just injuries and production. Then last
coaching
year,
changes and stuff. There's a lot.
Yeah, a whole bunch that goes into his, and that's why I've always kind of said too, like he has some legit stuff that goes into why it didn't work for him, or, you know, some of the behind the scenes stuff. Now, at the end of the day, if you're getting paid 30, 40 million, you just got to kind of overcome those things. But and even in the rankings that Seth does, like it shows his tiers over the years, and he was like 3A, and he dropped down to like 3B, and now he's like in the 4B range for the last couple of years. So
yeah,
it does, while I can pick at the rankings or who's ahead of him or how it was all worded, his value in the league has just diminished. And there's really nothing else, if I was like talking to Karl, that he can do other than just, I mean, so far away from like the shut up and dribble thing, but just show up and let his basketball do the talking. It's just have your playoff performances do the talking, you know? And then if you have great playoff performances, sure, get on the mic and say whatever you want to say. But I think the league in general now just wants to see a guy that, you know, I mean, we're 5 years or less removed from him being the number one player GMs wanted to start a franchise with. That's not the case anymore. He's not even the number one player to start a franchise with on his own team. That's Ant. So we'll see. I mean, I know he's playing for the Dominican Republic this summer for FIBA, and he looks rejuvenated. He looks healthy. He looks in really good shape. And you just kind of cross your fingers that he doesn't have any hiccups leading up till training camp, because I think that derailed him as well. But the view of Karl-Anthony Towns in the NBA is not even arguably, it is the lowest it has ever been since he came out of Kentucky. So
it is. Yeah.
The only way to fix that is to play better and win games.
And one other thing too, I'm just kind of looking through some of his year-by-year trends here and comparing to, and we talked about this at the end of the Nuggets-Wolves series, that his peers a few years ago included Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, 2 guys that were neck and neck for the MVP award. Jokic probably should be a 3-time MVP. Those guys were all kind of in the same sentence or the same category a few years ago. Now there's a clear line between those guys. I know Cat is a better 3-point shooter. Those guys can both shoot threes. Cat is a better 3-point shooter than those guys. But I do wonder, on one hand, I want him shooting a lot of threes because he makes a lot of threes. And mathematically, if you have a guy that hits 40% of his threes, he should be taking a lot of threes. But I wonder if he's leaned too far into being a long-range shooter at the expense of some of the other layers of his game that could make him an even bigger force, especially in the playoffs when, you know, the scouting reports catch up. If you look at Nikola Jokic, for example, the last couple of years, so like take last year, dude, 72% of his shot attempts are inside 10 feet. And you watch that series against the Wolves, you watch like all the playoff series, he's just an automatic get it down low, dribble, or offensive rebound. But he's also hitting like almost 40% of his threes, but he's taking fewer. Early in Cat's career, he was great inside, and like 60% of his shot attempts or more came from inside 10 feet. So I guess I want him to shoot threes because he's elite at shooting threes, but I'm wondering, has he abandoned this other potentially highly efficient, great area of his game that he was actually really good at 4 or 5 years ago? Could he learn maybe from a Jokic and Embiid and some of these guys that have maybe passed him by the last couple of years? That's a question I have.
Yeah, and I think it's a good question. He did average, and last year's stats are almost impossible to pull anything from because he only played 29 games, but he also averaged a career 4.8 assists, which I think, again, I'm just going to do it, whatever. I'm going to pick on Porzingis. I think Porzingis' career high is 2.7.
Porzingis has a family, okay?
So Porzingis' career best for assists in a season is Karl's career worst. So I think if he's, averaging 5 assists a game on top of 20 points and 9 rebounds, the one thing with Karl compared to like Jokic and Embiid, it's not an excuse because everything you said is 100% spot on. I think one simple way to fix the team, if they do truly run it back and this roster they have now is what they start the season with, we have now kind of cleared the way for Ant to be the alpha, the 1A or the whatever. It's getting Karl back to being like the 1B. And whether that be taking a lot of threes because he's the self-proclaimed best shooting big man of all time, or back to your point of like just being unstoppable in the low post in that kind of 8 to 10 feet range. He just tried, and this is his personality. This comes through in podcasts, everything. He just tries to do the right thing too many times or say the right thing. And last year, he thought the right thing to do was to make Rudy Gobert Hakeem Olajuwon and get him the ball and get him post touches, get him involved. And if this team just realizes, hey, Rudy should almost always be the fourth option anytime he's on the floor, even behind like Jaden or whatever, maybe that'll clear the way for just, you can't have Karl-Anthony Towns taking 9 shots in a playoff game. You can't have Karl-Anthony Towns taking 1 3-pointer in a stretch of 3 games in February. Like, you need him to be emphasized on offense because the defense is never going to be there, and that's why they traded for Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
But the offense is still, in my mind, otherworldly at what he does best, attacking from the top. For being 5 assists a game, he'll never be Jokic, but that's a pretty good number for your big guys. So they just need to use him better. He needs to be selfish more, which I know critics of his might roll their eyes at, but I really do think part of Karl's problem is just he's too unselfish sometimes. It's like, no. You make $60 million now. You need to score 28 points a game. Like, you need to be that fiddle or the second fiddle behind Ant. So again, the list I'm not a big fan of, but it does spark a good conversation of how do you get his value back, not only for potential trades next summer, cap stuff, but how do you get his value back to where, he was a predominant role during those best years of his career and trying to elevate this team. He is the best teammate he's ever had. How do you now kind of use him right to build it up again?
Yeah, it's if last year was a big job for Chris Finch to figure out how all these pieces can work together, this year might even be bigger because some of the same questions exist about, can those two guys play together for X amount of minutes? Jaden McDaniels is going to continue you just paid Naz Reid. Can you find an extra 5 to 8 minutes a night for him? So I'm excited for training camp to start here in like a month. But and by the way, the rest of the rankings above tier 4 haven't come out yet, I don't think. So we'll see where Anthony Edwards winds up. But I didn't see him in tiers 4 or 5. So I'm assuming Anthony Edwards is
burned the website down.
He's at least in tier 3 somewhere. Hey, you were rubbing some elbows. You came into town and you went to the Timberwolves City Edition jersey unveil at Lord Fletcher's. I like the designs. I think they make some sense. We're tying it into Minnesota Lake culture. So give our audience an idea. What was it like rubbing elbows with Timberwolves luminaries like Ricky Davis, who apparently was there?
I did get introduced to Ricky Davis. I was trying to maybe see if I could get him on the pod for a future guest. I did get some other guests lined up. Ricky Davis, who is now obviously former NBA player, but is coaching high school basketball in the Minnesota area. Troy Hudson was there. The stars of the show were Naz Reid and Mike Conley. But it was a cool event. It was a mixture of like front office people and season ticket holders, and I guess like social like influencers, because I was there. I don't know what my role was, but it was cool. I was telling you this before we recorded. People are big fans of the pod, so I always appreciate when anyone wants to go up and say that, because really, truly, just you and I have fun doing this and making people laugh and entertaining them. But
it is a highly entertaining top 50 NBA podcast according to Apple charts. Yes.
My mom was so happy about that. Shout out to my mom. No, it was cool. I got to talk to Naz a little bit. Got to talk to Mike Conley. After the jerseys themselves, I don't know. I can't ever get too. I'm not a big jersey guy. I'm more of the retro. Yeah. I know a lot of people wanted them to put trees on there and stuff. I still believe that if things go right, maybe there'll be another jersey possibly this season to add to the collection, and maybe it's more of a hardwood classic. Maybe they use the trees. They also, like, knowing how the sausage is made through Nike and these teams, like, they can't just do the trees every year. Like, they can't just be Disney and, make 9 Little Mermaids. They have to try new things. But I mean, for the most part, Naz said this is the best jersey that he's ever worn since he got here. And who's going to disagree with Naz?
You mean in terms of how it looks or how comfortable it is? Is it
how it looks. He's
like a tri-blend or what?
I love. Yeah, I don't know about the quality and the thread count, but he really likes the design. Mike Conley is like, I've worn a lot of jerseys. I've been around the league a long time. He goes, I really like it. So it was cool. And then it was cool too to just, they showed up on a yacht to Lord Fletcher's or whatever that was owned by some season ticket holder. But Naz mentioned multiple times. Our friend of the show, Michael Grady, was interviewing him. He said that Minnesota feels like home. Mike Conley now has been able to move his family there. He's got 3 small kids. He feels like Minnesota's home. I wouldn't be surprised, Phil, if at some point this season we're doing a podcast talking about how Mike Conley maybe signs one of those Patrick Beverley deals. I think if Mike Conley had the choice, he would end his career in Minnesota. And that's a topic for another day.
So his impression of the organization and the state was that high in his,
I think he likes
3 months
here.
or whatever.
I also think, too, part of it's selfish. Like, he doesn't want to keep moving. I remember talking to him the night after they lost to the Wizards before the All-Star break, and he had just been traded, and everything was a whirlwind. But he has a tight-knit family. His wife does a lot for them. But I think they like being in Minnesota. That was their first ever, like, boat ride experience with, Minnesota lake culture on the day that was celebrating lake-themed jerseys. So, and I think he really, really believes in this team. He can't say enough positive things about Ant and Jaden. So it was cool. It was a fun event. A lot of big time people there. But the way Nas embraced calling this place home, Young Gravy performed. I don't know. Crunch was on a jet ski.
Young Gravy's from Minnesota, right?
Yes, I learned that in real time. And very nice guy. He showed up on another boat. Crunch was on a jet ski. It was really truly like a Mad Lib of like, I woke up that day hungover. I was like,
I did see
what's going on right now?
Crunch on a jet ski at one point in the background.
Crunch was on a jet ski. Yeah. There were drones. It was just a lot. But everyone's really nice. And I think it was the way I was explaining it to some of my friends is I think the jersey idea was like an A+. You think of Minnesota, you think of lakes and lake culture. I think maybe the execution was maybe a B+. I think there's some stuff on the front. Like they had the tagline, "We run deep," which I like the font, but they didn't use that font for like the jersey. So I don't know.
You're out on the font. You're out on the jersey font is kind of where you're at.
For people that came to listen to me talk about fonts, I would have gone with Helvetica. It'll look better once these players are on them. But I mean, I had seen some brief snippets of these jerseys from my friend out here, and once you saw it like on Nas Reed or on Mike Conley and how clean the shorts are and stuff, it all comes down to how's it going to look on Ant. And if it looks good on Ant, there will be. I know Johnny K tweeted this out, but they're talking about this at the event. There will be a matching court with this, which I know a lot of people love. So I don't know how they're going to design a lake-themed court, if there's going to be like beaches on the sidelines or whatever, but that'll be cool too because they tried that.
Walleyes jumping up in the air, 3D, it'd be great.
Some bobbers in the paint. But yeah, it'll be fun. I'm hopeful that they get those hardwood classics. I don't really know any updates on that, but it is exciting to see new jerseys, and I was just kind of out on last year's City Edition jerseys for the most part. So
yeah, I think they overthought those a little bit.
Or my color scheme. Last year's jerseys, simply put, you had to explain to people what they were. You had to explain what it was. This year's, you get it. It says Land of 10,000 Lakes on like the seams. You get it.
Yeah,
you don't have
give me a 10-second elevator pitch. I don't need a half-hour explanation kind of thing. Yeah. So by the way, you said that some of the luminaries rolled up in a boat of some kind. I'm told it was a Bennington from Power Lodge. At least that's what I'm going to go with. And right now, Power Lodge is celebrating 25 years in business of bringing action and excitement to Minnesota as your go-to destination for all things marine and power sports. And so at all of their local locations, Brainerd, Ramsey, Anemia, Sauk Rapids, they're rolling out the red carpet with food, prizes, giveaways, 25 days of deals on the latest off-road and on-road vehicles, boats, and supplies. Find out more at powerlodge.com, powerlodge.com. Are you ready? No, go ahead. You go first.
I was just saying, speaking of boats, our friend Chris Finch was also there. And the highlight of the day for me was you had taken me and Jake Kelly out for dinner on Saturday, the man behind Jake's Crafts. Jake got to meet and introduce himself to Chris Finch. Chris Finch knew who he was. Chris Finch is a big fan of his. So just seeing, honestly, the biggest luminary there, despite, Tim Connolly and Chris Finch and all these people, was probably just
Jake's
Crafts, just rubbing elbows. I was talking to Grady before he had to do his like microphone stuff and kind of host the event. And he was like, I was trying to wear my Lake Slow-Mo shirt here, but the team wanted me to wear a polo. So the Jake's Craft brand has never been stronger. It was great to see Finchy and him get a picture together. So the vibes couldn't be any higher, no matter what you think of the jerseys.
I love it, man. Finchy was Finchy double fisting. Was he coming from his all day hang at whatever his palatial estate is on Lake Minnetonka?
What's great is like people are dressed up for it. It's a big day. They're trying to impress the fans and probably season ticket holders. And then Finchy just rolls up in a Vineyard Vines long sleeve. Like if you didn't know that was Chris Finch, you would just be like, that is a dad who owns multiple boats on Lake Minnetonka.
Yes.
And that's all I want to think of Finch is just vineyard vines, maybe a beer in hand, probably just got done scouting some FIBA games. And he's like, I'll stop by, have a beer.
I'll swing by. I'll say hi to the Timberwolves influencers. Kyle, are you ready for Flagrant Howls' first stab at the Basketball Reference Immaculate Grid? Are you ready for this? I wonder if I can zoom this in a little bit here.
So bad at this, but I had talked to a couple people on Sunday that were like, "Are you doing Immaculate Grid?" And I was like, "I've seen it. It was described to me basically as Wordle for basketball nerds," which I was like, "Oh, okay, that's actually how I want to live my life." So, but I'm terrible at it right now. So
yeah, I think so. I've gotten the baseball one down, and I think baseball was always the sport that I followed the closest in the 90s and early 2000s. So there's names in like fantasy baseball. So I'm not as good at the basketball one yet, but you and I are going to work together. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock here so that we aren't doing this for a half hour.
Okay.
We'll put 5 minutes on the clock. Our goal is to go 9 for 9. Now, the next step above that is to get as obscure as you can to have a low rarity score, but let's just try and like go 9 for 9 on this, if that works for you. 5 minutes on the clock. Here we go. Let's start with this one. Let's do the 20 points per games column. Let's just knock that one out.
Okay.
So a Blazer, so we're looking for the audio audience, a Blazer who was a Maverick, a Blazer who was a Hornet, and then a Blazer who scored 20 points at one point in a season. A Clipper who was a Mav, a Clipper who was a Hornet, and a Clipper who scored 20 points a game. And then a King who was a Mav, a King who was a Hornet, and a King who scored 20 points per game. How about Chris Webber right off the bat?
Okay. Yeah. That works for me.
You good with that?
Yeah.
28%. We're on the board.
I was
a Maverick who was a Clipper, DeAndre Jordan? Or did he ever? He went to the Mavs at one point after that fiasco, right?
No, because that was like the chair gate where he was like not allowed to leave the Clippers.
But didn't he eventually get to the Mavericks at some point?
Oh, now this is great podcast. Everyone's like, you don't know anything, and I can prove it. Maybe you could throw that one in there. I was that Charlotte. I hope this doesn't go back. I've only done this a couple times. I don't know
we get the Hornets history here, by the way. We get Hornets back to the late 80s, if it helps.
That Charlotte Hornets Sacramento Kings one makes me think Isaiah Thomas, like the little guy from Washington.
Let's try it. I think you're right. That's the other Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah,
we want this one. We want the one from 2000.
Yeah, we want. Yeah.
If we're wrong on the second one here, we can just fold up shop and never do this game ever again. Dude, nice job. 10%. Look at you, dude.
Okay.
Nice work.
I have. If we go up a couple, this one I feel pretty confident. Portland Trailblazers, Charlotte Hornets, Gerald Wallace.
Wow, Gerald Wallace, man. You know, so in the baseball one, Edwin Jackson played for 14 teams. I feel like there's some guys like that in the NBA too. Gerald Wallace might be one of them. Let's do it. Look at
so does the 18% tell me that it's right?
That tells you that 18% of people who guessed this correctly guessed Gerald Wallace.
Okay.
So if it fills in, we're correct. So we're good. We're 3 for 3. How about Blazers who scored 20 points a game? I mean, Clyde Drexler. I don't know if Rasheed did.
Clyde Drexler.
If you want to get real obscure, like Mighty Mouse might have done it. Should we go Drexler?
Yeah. Okay. See, I still need to learn like the nuances of this.
21%. Okay.
I still need, but like when I just think of guys who played for the two teams, I don't know if that's how the strategy is with this game is, but
yeah.
Dallas Mavericks, Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
Raymond Felton. And I remember him because he had a really good cup of coffee when I was in Portland.
Let's get it. Raymond Felton. 2%, dude. Ooh, that's a good one right there. That's a keeper. You're going to want to hang on to that one.
The Clippers one is just throwing me for a loop.
Clippers, let's go 20 points a game. I mean, obviously, recently they have two guys who have done it. I'm trying to think more old school. Did Elton Brand, right? Didn't Elton Brand score?
Yeah, do Elton Brand. Yeah.
Okay.
I know so much about the Charlotte Hornets, it actually makes me really depressed.
9%. Dude, we're 6 for 6. This is great. And we have 2.5 minutes left on the clock. A Maverick who was a king. Harrison Barnes?
A Maverick who was a king.
Didn't Harrison Barnes play for the Mavs?
I don't know if Harrison Barnes played for the Mavs. I thought you can throw him in there.
No, it's
the Charlotte Hornets Clippers angle.
That's a tough one, man. I mean, that is. Did Darius Miles ever play for the Hornets?
I don't know. I don't want to cheat.
Did Michael Olowokandi ever play for the Mavericks?
Try Steven Jackson. He played for the Hornets for, I think, 2 years.
Did he?
Yeah.
Let's go with it, dude. Let's go with it. Steven Jackson. Come on, be the card. 2%. Yep. Kyle, dude, let's go.
Now the Clippers, Dallas Mavericks one. I don't know. It's got to be a throwback. So the Kings and the Mavs.
I feel like there's recent ones. I feel like Mavericks and Clippers have. God, there's so many obvious ones we're probably missing here. Why do I think Harrison Barnes played for the Mavericks?
I don't want to cheat. I don't want to look it up. But I mean,
did Hedo Turkoglu play for the Mavericks? Some of these guys at the end of their career.
This can go pretty far back, right?
Oh, yeah. It's as far back as you want.
I'm just trying to fill that Mavericks King square with just a player who played both teams.
Yep.
He played for them, I think, during a Dirk year. Try Caron Butler, who played for the Kings for multiple years, but I think he played with Dirk.
That's aggressive, dude.
If I do good at this, I'm never playing this again.
Let's go.
I have no idea on the Mavericks.
You're killing it right now. We need a Maverick who is a Clipper, and we have 30 seconds left on our self-imposed clock.
Who was a Clipper?
There's probably so many. Why am I blanking on this?
I feel like it's a guard. I mean, no, Barea didn't play for the Clippers.
Oh, did he though?
Reggie Jackson didn't play for the Mavs.
Did Tyson Chandler ever play?
Tyson Chandler might be a really good guess, actually.
Why am I dying on this DeAndre Jordan hill?
Why do I feel DeAndre Jordan in there? I'm pretty sure he never made it to the Mavs because they blocked his door. I'm sorry in advance.
No, that's fine. Okay. I'm sorry, dude. This is probably wrong. It's not wrong. It's correct. We are immaculate.
Wait, he played for the Clippers or he played for the Mavs?
Let's go. All right, so here's the results.
By the way, there's no value in this. For me to cheat, I'm never gonna play this game again.
Look at that, dude. So here are the most common answers at each in each square. He's actually the most common one. DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews.
Oh, that's a good
for
one.
Mavericks Blazers. Nick Batum, Damian Lillard for the 20 points per game. Blake Griffin and Chris Webber is the most common. Malik Monk as a Hornet who was a King. Nick Batum shows up twice on here, by the way. Hornets and Clippers. It's amazing. Okay. And then Harrison Barnes. Yeah, Harrison Barnes.
So, the one thing I've learned, I haven't gotten into this much, but I have learned people being like, don't go with what the most current name is. So I think these are a lot of popular names. But that's how I was trying to go. But the Raymond Felton one, I have a Raymond Felton story for another day. So, okay, that's awesome.
Dude, great work. Wow, what teamwork there. I think now we got to do this every episode.
I don't know. I think we should never do that again because I feel like we could go 0 for 9. That's fun, though. I see why people like it. The Wordle for basketball nerds.
Yes.
I get that now. Okay.
It's a blast. Hey, thank you guys for hanging out with us here on Flagrant Howls, your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. Please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts, and click the like button and the subscribe button on the Score North YouTube channel. He's Kyle. I'm Phil. We are immaculate.